Hi everyone. I know this is several months late, but better than never, I guess. In response to my last video on the topic, I received a number of inquiries by email and various other channels for some clarifications and expansions on a few things that I said, and, well, here they are. The first thing I'm going to do is explain a little bit about the sort of legal framework for firearms ownership in South Africa. That is governed by the Firearms Control Act, which is Act 60 of 2000. It's largely based on Canadian legislation, although it's interesting at this point to note that a number of the Canadian requirements and regulations have in the interim been scrapped because they were too expensive and of little to no public safety benefit. What a prospective firearm owner needs first is a proficiency certificate. This requires training, some written assignments and tests on safe firearms handling and on the law, and then practical training and a test shoot as well. If all those are passed, and the written tests at least are not particularly difficult, you have to have studied and really understand the material, but if you do understand it, then there's no particular barrier to passing. The person is then issued with a proficiency certificate. That then gets taken to the police, who take fingerprints and also interview people in the applicant's life, family members, workmates, and the proficiency certificate, the interviews and the fingerprints for a criminal background check are then all processed, and if all of that is of sufficient standard, that gets turned into a certificate of competence to own a firearm. Those are issued in 4 categories: handgun, shotgun, and that is a manually operated shotgun, so double-barreled or pump action or lever action, manually operated rifle, and semi-auto. Semi-auto is both rifle and shotgun. There was a court judgment that those competency certificates had to be issued within 4 months of the application, and apparently that sometimes happens. Once the competency certificate has been issued, one then finds a firearm and buys it, and it then, well, one doesn't take possession of it because ownership and possession are 2 different things. One then takes the competency certificate and the purchase documents from the dealer back to the police and applies for a license for the firearm. License to possess the firearm. This is, again, where things get complicated, because in addition to the 4 different types of competency, there are several different types of licenses that can be applied for. The first, and in terms of the law, the kind of least important or least, say the lowest priority reason for owning a firearm is self-defense. That can be issued for 1 firearm for the applicant, and that can either be a handgun or a manually operated shotgun. That license needs to be renewed every 5 years. The second is a license for occasional sport shooting or for hunting, occasional hunting use. So going to the range every so often, doing a bit of plinking, going out into the bush every so often, that's the license for that. That can be for 1 handgun, a maximum of 1 handgun, and then an additional 2 or 3 long guns. Again, those can be manually operated rifles or manually operated shotguns. Those must be renewed every 10 years. And between self-defense licenses and occasional sport/occasional hunting licenses, that's limited to a maximum of 4 firearms. So that can be a maximum of, that can be either 4 long guns or 3 long guns and 1 handgun, or 3 long guns and 2 2 long guns and 2 handguns, if one of those handguns is a self-defense license. Then there is a license as a dedicated hunter or sport participant. This can be any of the previous firearms, plus semi-automatic rifles and semi-automatic shotguns. Those are also 10-year licenses, and one needs to compete or hunt regularly as a member of a sort of police-registered sporting body or hunting organization. So that's IPSC, IDPA, Olympic Pistol, Trap and Skeet, and then serious regular hunting. All of that fits in there. And then the 4th type is as a collector. This can be for any type of weapon that fits with the collector's collection theme, and there are different grades of collector. So, for example, Category A collectors can own anything up to and including automatic weapons. There are a handful of them in the country, and a mere handful of automatic weapons in private hands. And that goes down to, I think, Category D, which is a sort of probationary collector. And the sort of reading between the lines of the Act, seems to be, it's never explicitly stated, but the way it's structured, to me, a non-lawyer, is that the primary purpose of firearms ownership is sports and hunting, and collecting possibly at the same level of importance, maybe a fraction lower, but definitely self-defense is the sort of least well regarded in the law. So for example, those licenses are shorter, 5 years as opposed to 10 years, and it's a lot more difficult to establish the need for the firearm, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. Sorry, my script is off to the side here, which is why I keep looking that way. So yes, knowing what type of license is appropriate, one then has to motivate need. In other words, for a self-defense license, one needs to prove that one lives in exceptionally dangerous circumstances, that other security measures have been taken and still they seem insufficient. One may perhaps have been a victim of violence in the past. It's apparently quite a lot that one needs to say in the application. Apparently the application pack that a good self-defense application is part of is quite a thick stack of paper. For a sporting license, it's a little less difficult. One has to show that a firearm is suitable for recreational or sporting use, or to compete in some or other division, or to hunt some particular game. And then yeah, that shouldn't be and usually isn't that difficult. Then all of that's submitted along with another criminal record check, and the committee at the Central Firearms Registry may or may not grant the license, depending on how well they think you've demonstrated the need and whether they think you're a fit and proper person. Whatever that means, that's the wording in the Act. Some of this is perfectly reasonable, I think, some of it less so, and I'll get into my reasoning in the next video, which hopefully will be a little bit sooner than this one. The other questions I got were about why I had never gotten myself a firearm, since it's obviously something that interests me enough to put YouTube videos up. Most people assumed that it was primarily about the sort of bureaucratic nightmare of the process, and that certainly did play a role. I know people who went through all of this and were still waiting for a decision 3 or 4 years later, after documents were lost, returned, misfiled, have details on the application mysteriously change multiple times. And that did kind of affect me and my decision-making, but there were other things at play. First was just that I was never sure I wanted one. I shot a little bit as a kid at school. I was on the school rifle team. And I've occasionally gone to the range with when friends have invited me. But, is that really enough interest for the kind of capital purchase that a gun is? And not really, most of the time. But I think the primary reason is a little more interesting. It just never struck me that it was a path open to me. Not because of the sort of legal, financial, or administrative barriers, although, they're significant and must have played a role, I'm sure. But it just never occurred to me that it was on the behavioral menu for a person like me. So there's some kind of complex blend of not wanting to disappoint my parents, not wanting to alienate friends and colleagues, and something else that... It's not even that I thought I'd like one, but I'm afraid to alienate people. It just never kind of occurred to me to want it. It wasn't what people like me do. It's sort of unconscious, wordless, very, very basic level tribalism. So, those should answer most of the questions that people asked me. More to come.